Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I wanted to chat with you guys a little bit about weight classes in combat sports, because the topic came up in one of my videos yesterday. So let me put on my +5 hat of weaponsmithing, work on skilling up my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about this. And yeah, this is slightly an off topic, but it's still fitness and strength related. But you know, people bring that up whenever we start talking about size versus strength and everything else. And they'll even mention people like Bruce Lee. But if you guys recall, Bruce Lee always said that if two fighters had equal skill, that the stronger one would win, I think, 8 out of 10 times. That's what Bruce Lee said. And I think it's fair to say Bruce Lee probably knew a little bit about fighting, a little bit. More than I do, probably more than you do. So you have that to think about. And people need to realize that people watch too many movies and too much TV if they think size doesn't matter in any sort of conflict. And I know that people love to make videos and stuff to highlight how, oh, it doesn't matter that skill is everything, by taking untrained people sometimes who are big or with minimal training and having them square off in some sort of fight against someone with years and years and years of fighting experience and training experience, right? Someone who is legitimately good. And then, you know, the big bodybuilder or whatever gets beat. Like I saw one a while back, right? We saw that come through YouTube. It was like a BJJ guy who was really small against a bodybuilder. As if bodybuilders are actually athletes. Let's be honest here, guys. And he pretty much choked him out, all right? But is that reality? That's not reality. You go to any combat sport, I don't care whether it's boxing, MMA, a karate tournament, people are put into weight classes. And they're put into weight classes for a reason. Because size and strength matter. And yes, your skill level is obviously number one. I mean, otherwise you wouldn't see an untrained bodybuilder get choked out by someone with 15 years of BJJ experience, right? But look at the discrepancy you need for that to happen. In other words, in order for that to happen, you need someone who is so much better than the bigger, stronger guy that they're 10 levels above them, basically, is the way to think about it. When they are both actually trained, they both have fighting experience, they've both been coached, they've both been in a ring against multiple opponents, all that nonsense starts going away real quick. For example, if you take two boxers, perfect example, take two boxers, because we know that strength, size, and punching and kicking power are extremely correlated, all right? The ability to produce force, you are limited in how hard you can punch by how much force you can physically produce. There are physical limits, and no amount of meditation or practice with a punch is going to increase your ability to produce force beyond what your nervous system and muscles are physically capable of producing. You will have a limit. And that limit will be based upon your physiology. It will be based on both your neuromuscular efficiency, muscle fiber distribution, and very importantly, the size of the muscles involved. Obviously, skill matters, and someone who's not trained to punch or kick will never be able to actualize their potential at it, irrespective of size. But if you're twice as strong with the same level of training, you can punch twice as hard. That's what people forget with this. They always want to compare the other and act like it doesn't matter. Well, you go take two boxers, and people say, well, don't these welterweight guys or whatever, these guys in the 140s, that's what came up. They're pretty good fighters, even though they don't have a big amount of size. So how do you reconcile that? Okay, so let's say you take two guys of the same height. One of them's 145 at 9% body fat, and the other is 185 at 9% body fat. So 40 pounds difference, most of it being muscle, pretty similar heights, and they are both trained boxers, right? They both have been coached by the same coach for the past 5 years, and you put them in a ring together. Do you think that's going to be a fair fight? Do you honestly think if the amount of experience and the skill is roughly equal or even in the same ballpark, do you think there is any chance that 185-pound guy isn't going to destroy that 145-pound guy? No. If you're a betting man, if you had to put your hard-earned money on it, you would bet on the guy with more muscle, because you know he can punch harder. You know he can hit harder. And again, the only way the smaller, weaker guy wins is if he just flat out outskills them. And you can't just be a little bit better to pull that off. In other words, if someone's got 30 pounds of muscle on you, or even 30, 40 pounds of body weight with most of it being muscle, and they are physically stronger than you, you have to be a considerably better fighter than them to win. You can't be close to their level. You need to be a hell of a lot better. Now, if you're a hell of a lot better, you got a fighting chance, and you very well might come out on top, and it does happen. But I mean, all the skill in the world won't matter once the bigger guy starts clobbering you. It's not going to matter at that point. And I mean, the perfect example, the example I remember seeing in high school, and I told this story before. I told this story before of when I was in high school. I saw this conflict between this smaller Asian guy, and he was below average height, slim build, pretty good martial artist from what I knew. I knew he practiced something, and he got in this argument with this big, like 6'4", 300-pound guy who didn't lift or anything. He was just big. He was big. And the kid jumped up in the air and did this big roundhouse kick and hit him square in the chest. The guy caught air, hit him square in the chest, and it's like, yeah, that actually looked pretty good until the guy caught his leg. When he jumped up and kicked him in the chest, the guy got a hold of his leg. And it was pretty much over. That was it. The guy got in his one kick, and he was unconscious on the ground pretty quick after the guy got him and basically treated him like a rag doll. And all that skill, and I don't think the big guy had any fighting training. I don't think he had any training. I didn't see anything that would demonstrate to me that he had any proficiency at any form of fighting. And he beat the ever-living shit out of him. Because he was at least twice his body weight, 1.5 feet taller than him probably, maybe at least a foot, maybe 1.5 feet exactly, at least a foot taller than him, over double his body weight. And all that skill didn't matter once he got his hands on him. And that's kind of the point. So when people bring this stuff up, they'll talk about, these smaller guys. Well, don't they have all this power and speed and agility? Well, they might. But what happens if the bigger guy with a lot more muscle and a lot more strength also is actually a skilled fighter, and they're actually trained, and they actually have talent and ability, and they've spent years honing their skills, and they have fighting experience? That size and strength becomes an enormous advantage, and size does equal strength. Ultimately, that's why we have weight classes in all these sports. That's why weightlifting has weight classes. That's why powerlifting has weight classes. That's why combat sports have weight classes. Heavier body weight means you have more potential for strength and power. And that strength and power matters on the end of a punch or a kick or in grappling if you are skilled enough to actually use it. I mean, we're not talking about untrained people here, and people need to remember that. This always comes up because they think, well, I saw this really small guy. It's like, yeah, he was a trained, really skilled fighter against someone with no experience who was big, okay? That's the difference. And that still might not matter. Like in the case that, I described from high school, it still might not matter in some cases. Because if he messes up, the skill doesn't matter. The skill is the ability to not mess up. The experience is where you don't make mistakes and you don't get caught and you don't let the bigger guy use his strength and weight against you. But if he does, you're not skilled enough. You're not skilled enough to beat him if you find yourself in a situation where he can use it. You just messed up. And that's, again, experience at that point, I suppose. But the point is, guys, size does equal strength. And anyone who doesn't understand that, they bring up boxing or MMA or anything else, they have weight classes for that very reason. They have weight classes because body weight and muscle mass in particular, equals more strength. And that matters when somebody hits you, if they know how to use that strength. So once they're trained, all this nonsense about skill, if the skill is even roughly equal to bigger guy and stronger guy, because again, the size can equal strength, it usually equals more strength, or strength potential, has a very, very clear advantage. And again, this point has to be understood when these topics come up. So you can't say, oh, well, these guys, they're still great fighters even though they're lighter weight. Yeah, because they're choosing to stay in that weight class. You don't throw them into a weight class against an equally skilled or ranked fighter who's 2 or 3 weight classes above them, because they're going to get crushed 95% of the time unless they are just that damn good. And that's the exception, not the norm. All right, guys, so that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.